Okay, I think it's time to start. 10:30. Thanks for coming. I think we should close the door because there's no microphone. So the subject today is meetings-free software development, like in the title, like in the agenda. I will try to focus on one aspect of that because I'm the CTO of a company and I'm managing programmers every day, and we do it the way we do programming for the last 3 years without any meetings. And I will try to demonstrate just one aspect of how we do that. So this is more about management, even though we are quite technical, we are writing software. So that's why I gave the title called Blame the Project. And I'm trying to be quick so that I hope you will have questions. So let's try to fit in like 20 minutes, maybe even less. A few words about us. So it's a software company, quite small. We have about 100 programmers working with us. All of them are freelancers working remote. I mean, we don't have a physical office. We don't have programmers sitting together. We just manage people who work from different countries, different places in the world. And the way we manage them is purely through electronic systems like ticketing systems, GitHub, or basically only online and without any personal meetings at all. So we don't communicate personally. And today, I'll try to show you why it's better for the project, why it's better for us, I mean in terms of management. So first of all, I want to show you this piece of code. Let's say you're a developer and your task is actually to implement this function. So how many of you actually understand what it says? Just one person. Okay. So let's say you're in the team, you're in the development team, and you have to implement this function. You just open the piece of code, you see the description, so it clearly says what the function has to do, right? So now your job is to implement it, put the functionality in there, because now that doesn't implement anything, it's Java. So what's your approach in this case? What do you do first? What's your first intention? And you know there's a team of programmers, so you know there's a group of people in the project, and they're from different countries, obviously, and you need to implement this function. You know there are other programmers. So what's your first step?
Google Translate.
Yeah. First you'll try Google Translate, but the Google Translate may be not be able to help you here because text may not really match what we need. So the first intention is actually, that's what's going to happen. So let's say you're Andre, and you will find some Nikolai in this team who is probably from Russian piece of the team, from Russia, from somewhere, who actually can understand that. And you will ask the question, you will organize that so-called meeting with this person. Maybe not necessarily it's going to be a physical meeting, maybe not in the same room, but you will try to call or reach on Skype or reach on Slack. So you will try to communicate with that person to understand what this text really means. In order to get this information, I put this arrow in red because I think this is wrong. So I'll try to show you that this is the wrong way. And this is the source code, which contains that text, which you didn't understand. So you looked at the source code, you didn't understand the text, and you go to Nikolai, you fetch this knowledge from this guy, you kind of understand what it means, and then you start working on the code. This is a traditional way of doing that. This is we call it meetings. So I'm not saying meetings are things which happen in the same room, but I call meetings any informal communications between programmers. When something is not clear, when something is not understandable, that's why we need meetings in our teams. And that's how they happen. Slack is the most popular tool for software teams, as you probably know, and people talk in this Slack and then communicate, they share knowledge. And that's how they fetch information from each other. And this is what I suggested. So the first slide was wrong, this slide is right. So talking to Nikolai is the wrong way to fetch the information. You should not do that, as a programmer. Instead, you should go to the source code, and so you should not, let me put it in a more formal way, you should not blame yourself for not understanding the code. You should not blame yourself for I cannot understand Russian, so that's why something is wrong with me. I should go there and ask somebody. Or another example, I just gave this example to exaggerate a little bit. But let's say you look at the code and you don't understand this Java code. You don't understand what it does. You don't understand the functionality. You should not blame yourself for that. You should not blame yourself for not understanding the functionality because there's something wrong with me. I need to learn more. I need to talk to this person. I need to gather the information somehow, and only after that, I will be able to continue doing my job. Instead, you should blame the project. You should blame the project for not being clear enough for you to continue working with it. This is the right attitude. Instead of blaming yourself and trying to learn as much as possible and be the perfect engineer and be the master of all trades, you should always try to blame the project for not being clear enough for you to continue. And that's why we use bug tracker. I mean, the bug tracker is the best way to actually express this blame of the project and say, I don't like what I see. I don't understand this Russian piece of text. How about you fix that first, and then you give it back to me and I can continue to work on my task. And the bug tracker is how you do that. You create a bug, you create a ticket, like a ticket or a bug, explain what's wrong there, and you wait for solution from somebody else. So you do not talk to the person who knows how to solve that. You don't make this informal communication with the person. You don't ask this person to teach you. Instead, you ask this person or somebody, basically you ask the whole team to improve the project. So don't teach me, don't make me better, but instead improve the source code. Make it better for everybody, not just for myself. So that's why we say blame the project. That's what I'm telling to all the programmers who work with me. So never blame yourself. Don't try to fix the problem which you can't fix because something is unclear, when something is not understandable, right? But something you cannot understand. Blame the project which is not clear for you. And this is the right mindset. And I'm getting closer to the final line. So, and this is how it's going to look. If you follow this mentality, if you follow this mindset, then this is how the project will look for in general. So let's say you started to work, I can't even see it. Yeah, okay, let's say you start with the task number 17. And you can't fix it because there's some Russian piece of code and there's a piece of text there. You can't understand what to do. And then you create a bug which is called, let's say, 46. So you create a new bug where you say, how about you fix this description first, and after that I will be able to continue. And then you create the bug number 42 saying that I can't understand something else. Something else is not clear for me. So fix these two problems, and after they're fixed, I will be able to continue. And then somebody else will pick up these two bugs, pick up two tickets, and they will continue as well. One of these tickets is fixed already because it's green, and the 42 is not fixed. We're still working on it because somebody else started to work on that and again created a few problems. So it will look like this pyramid of problems creating problems. That's how we do it. That's how we train. Oops, thank you. That's how we train programmers to approach problems which they cannot fix immediately. So yeah, that's all right. I think you can understand what's there. So we ask always to blame the project and always create more tickets while working on something. While you're fixing one problem, don't try to put everything on your shoulders and fix everything. Don't try to make, to provide the entire solution from just by yourself. Always try to break it down into smaller problems and return it back to the project and say, this is not clear. This is not clear for me. This is not clear for me. Instead of talking to people, that way you will improve the source code. That way you will improve the code base, which will grow and become better and better with every single ticket you fix. So the knowledge about this source code will stay not in your head, not in the head of your colleague, or not in the head of somebody else, but it will be everything inside the source code. If you always blame the project and let the project fix itself. How the project will fix itself? By asking somebody else to fix the problems somebody else found. So that's how I think is, so, and now the summary. I'm almost done. So I'm saying that the no meetings means, first of all, no stress. No stress for programmers. Even though this may sound a little bit controversial, so you may say that people love to talk to each other and resolve problems in an informal way and just asking questions, but I believe that no meetings means actually no stress for programmers. Because every time because you're not as a programmer, I'm a programmer myself too, so every time as a programmer, if I look at the code and I know that there is a formal way and a simple way to resolve all my misunderstandings, to find answers to my questions. I mean, there's always not my problems, there's always a problem with the code, with the project. It's way easier for me to be in this project because I'm not afraid of of being called unskilled developer because you don't understand that. You look at the code, it's in Russian. So imagine the team, for example, again, it's an extreme example, but imagine the team where everybody were Russian developers and they made a lot of these comments. And you're the developer from another country, from Netherlands. You join the team and you will be really frustrated to see that. Because every time it will be necessary for you to talk to these developers and ask them what's there. What did you mean here? What did you mean there? Could you please translate it for me? If there is not this kind of mentality in the project, if there's no such, the policy in the project, that every time you find something wrong, blame the project back. Don't fix it yourself. So no meetings means, for us, means no stress for developers. They're not stressed. They're way more comfortable to be in a very unclear environment. When the code is new, the project is new, something is unclear, the project is too complex, they always know that they can resolve that by just pushing it back, returning back the problem to the project and saying, fix it for me first, and after that I will be able to continue. So this is way less stressful mechanism of communicating in the software team, comparing to traditional meetings in the same room, or in the same Slack channel, or in the same Skype group. So that's what I wanted to say. And we call it a little bit of promotion. So we call it extremely distributed software development. So we call this is the methodology which I introduced about 5 years ago, and I gave this name. So I'm writing about that. You can check my Twitter, you can follow me there, or you can check my blog. So we put this idea as one of the core principles of this methodology. So we call it extremely distributed software development. We are extremely distributed, but not just by territory, not by just sitting in different offices, but we intentionally put the developers aside from each other. We do not allow them, even technically, we do not allow them to communicate to each other in an informal way. So every time, this is really true. So we don't have these Slack channels or Skype calls. Every time they want to resolve something, they should go through the bug tracking system. They are not allowed technically to ask each other and say, hey, explain me this piece of code, I can understand it, or guide me through this piece of Java code because this is not clear what it does, so I need some information. Every time something is not clear, we ask them, submit the ticket. Let the project fix itself. Let us fix the source code, not you. We don't want to train you, we want to improve the project. And this becomes way less stressful and more productive. I'm done. What do you think?
My main question would be, how do you manage the tickets? Because I see if you have a lot of tickets piling up, basically, me as programmer, I cannot continue until I get that ticket that I submitted solved. So how are the tickets assigned? How do you manage that? How are they prioritized?
This is what we have managers for. So we have in each project, we have a project manager who is responsible for getting these tickets back from programmers and finding somebody else who will fix these tickets. Sometimes, quite rarely, but sometimes it happens that the ticket comes from one developer and we return it back to the same developer. I mean, you start with this task, you create another subtask if something is not clear, but we see that you can fix it yourself. So we just return it back and say, okay, forget about that one, but focus on this, fix that. So it's just a problem of managing, but you are right, we have many tickets, sometimes thousands of them. Mm-hmm. And we have people who actually control the quality of these tickets, because sometimes people report not in the right way, they abuse the system a little bit, they report too many tickets for too small problems. So it happens, yeah. But this kind of problem is way easier to manage than the problem of people doing informal communications and keeping information to themselves, according to my experience.
And the fact that people are blocked, how do you handle that?
That was the question I was expecting. So we allow people to, you're saying that the ticket, that this task is blocked until this one is solved, yeah? So we may have a quite long chain. So we allow programmers to report these two things and then close this task, if it's possible to close it without solving these problems. And quite often it's possible. So it's possible to introduce a little bit of functionality, not everything, because something is not clear for me, something is not clear, but something is clear. So I introduce a little bit and then say, these two things I will fix later when these guys will give me the answers. But something I already implemented, so I close the main task. So we don't have it high, we don't have the high hierarchy of tickets. We just allow them to close them as soon as they can by making a not complete implementation. That's our approach. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
How do you handle like the social bonding within a team?
Yeah, that's also a good question. So I've heard it a lot, that people saying that, we love to talk to each other because we're human, we love to communicate, we love to share some information, and we just love to shake hands sometimes in the office. So here I'm saying that no meetings doesn't mean that we do not communicate. We do communicate, but we do it through a formal way, through ticketing system. So when I'm saying that I don't understand this Russian text in there, please fix it, nothing stops me from putting a smile in the end of that. So I mean, we can be social while talking about that. I don't need to be like a machine, but we can talk. But it's just not happening through the Slack channel. It's just happening through the ticketing system. So, and we have a lot of communication happening. GitHub just a few weeks ago, introduced this like, unlike buttons. Mm-hmm. So you can like the message, you can unlike the message, you can put these emotions there. So I think that in general, if you look at the younger programmer comparing to older programmers like me, you will see that younger people are more into electronic emotions comparing to physical emotions. I mean, they can express a lot of things by just typing instead of talking and being personal. So I think the future in general, if you look like 10 years ahead, this is going to be the future. We will have less and less conversations in the same place. People will be more and more distributed. They will work from different countries, and the collocated teams will be an exception, not a rule. So now we have collocated teams more and the distributed teams as an exception. But the future is that the distributed teams will be the rule and collocated teams an exception. So the social aspect will just be transformed into something new. So right now we see it in our team. So people still stay social, but they communicate, in ticketing systems, in bug tracking systems.
But it's all asynchronous.
It's asynchronous, yeah. Well, if you're in front of the computer and GitHub sends you notifications and boom, you get a message, then it may turn into like a chat. Even this, if you, for example, consider Jira or GitHub for tracking tickets, then it may look like a more or less interactive communication. Even though it's not completely interactive. It's not like Slack, of course. You can see the message immediately popping up when somebody types it. But do we need that? In our case, yeah, but sorry, thanks.
I like this, for me, new way of thinking about the project. I have a concern. If a lot of those tickets are about something not clear, one way of solving this is making a lot of documentation. And after a while, I see a risk that the answer of the tickets will be first read all of the documentation. And isn't that less efficient than just quickly ask your colleague?
I've had that fear a few years ago when we started that approach, that the documentation will grow and we'll have a lot of text and people will be. But organically, what's happening, what I see is that the documentation, if it starts to grow, people start to complain as well as they complain when it's not complete. So when the documentation is small, then they create tickets and saying, hey, I can't understand with just one sentence what exactly this class is doing. But if this class has documentation of 5 pages, then they will start complaining and saying, it's too long for me, it's too much. Can you please, make it more compact and explain more shorter what it does? So the documentation allowing people to blame us for being incomplete or being too verbose is the way to maintain the documentation in the right size. That's what we see practically. So we're managing about 25 projects right now. Some of them are like 2 years old already. And we see the documentation, sometimes it grows, sometimes it's getting smaller, but it never becomes enormously big. Because if it's too big, programmers will start complaining and making tickets about that. Like I just said, they will say that I don't like this documentation. I need to spend an hour to understand what the class is doing or what this module is doing. So how about you make it shorter? And then somebody else will jump in because there's a ticket for it, and somebody else will jump in and fix it. So, and your question about maybe the personal discussions are more effective than reading an hour, spending an hour on documentation. If the documentation is so difficult that I need to spend an hour, then yes, of course, people will try to jump into personal meetings. And that's why we do not allow them to do that. So we're just saying there's no meetings, there's no possibility to do that. And they have to go back to the project, blame the project, and make the project fix the documentation. If we allow them to do meetings, then of course, yes, they will just abandon the whole documentation, they will go back to the traditional way of talking, and they will start talking in meeting rooms.
Yeah, if the documentation of a class is so enormous, then probably the problem is not the documentation, but the class itself.
Probably as well, yeah.
Does
as
it
well.
mean that then there will be a refactoring ticket?
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
They will always blame us, us, the project, the programmer will, because the person is staying aside of the project, the programmer will blame us for not being perfect. And we will have to always try to improve ourselves. Refactoring tickets, or documentation is incomplete, or it's too big. It's just happening organically. So we basically move the stuff which happens in meeting rooms into the source code, into this ticketing, discussion. Yeah.
What's the ratio between a manager and programmers, and how are they distributed over the time zones? If you have managers that assign that.
Yeah, in each project we have just one manager always, and about 20-25 programmers. Quite big. But they're distributed and they work from different time zones, from Brazil to Philippines, really different time zones. And we never see problems with time zones because we do not need them to be in the same room. We don't need them to talk, stay together for an hour. So we need to call everybody and make sure they wake up in the middle of the night and actually talk, which is a big problem for collocated teams or for teams who do meetings to share information. So we just say, okay, there's 5 tickets for you waiting for your answer. And as soon as this person wakes up, then we get answers. If he doesn't wake up, then there are no answers. But of course, it's a little bit slower, not a little bit, but sometimes it's slower than just in a meeting. But the effect we're getting from it, the no stress effect, and the quality of the product, I didn't mention that, but the quality of the code and the quality of documentation grows enormously.
So
Because everything is there.
the manager gets sick, then the tickets.
Yeah, if the manager gets sick, then we're in trouble. Yeah, of course. Yeah, but that's why we have other managers they can replace. But the manager is definitely the key guy who is keeping an eye on these tickets and dispatching them left and right.
How much of the quality do you attribute to the fact that programmers are not getting interrupted, like by somebody popping into his office and then his concentration is gone? And
yeah, that as well. Because I'm a programmer myself, and I know what it is. Like all these meetings and interruptions and asking questions. It's really. This is another aspect that's about the stress. Yeah, when you're working just an amount of tickets, you have just 5 tasks for you for the day. You need to give an answer here, you need to implement something there, you have to fix the documentation there, and then you go to party. So this is your agenda. Nobody's going to interrupt you. If they will interrupt, it's going to be the agenda for tomorrow. It's always the really structured and very disciplined agenda. There's nobody can actually interrupt you. So you're right, absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, there's.
Do you make this happen in a structure like nowadays? We are all in the room, this normal behavior, human reflex of asking the person next to us will happen. How do you see the evolution from co-located to distributed? If the company is absolutely co-located and everything is done in that room.
I think that strategically, if you look 25 years ahead, then I think these companies who co-locate hundreds of people will not exist anymore. So there will be less and less programmers who will agree to work in these offices and sitting in the same place and spending from 9 till 5. This way of managing programmers will be just removed from the market. Will be just for not really high-skilled programmers eventually. Because now I see that the more people send me resumes and send me they want to work. We're getting about from 5 to 10 new applications every day from programmers. That's how much people want to work with us. We're not accepting all of them, but that's the amount, that's the volume which is coming to us. And we see that the higher the level of the programmer, the more we see on the resume that this guy is working remotely and as a freelancer, as a contractor. So people are, I think this is the trend. So the less and less people get full-time employed if the skill of the person is going up. So they just tend to work, they want to work as freelancers or contractors, but not sitting in the same office. Because I think, first of all, because the way people are managed in the same place, in a co-located place, is so stressful, is so boring, is so time-consuming, is so ineffective, that we just have to get out of that as soon as possible. In 25 years, I'm sure that this is going to happen. And first of all, like I said, see what these young people are doing right now. Young, like 16, 18, like teenagers right now. They're all in front of screens. These old guys like me, we like to talk because we're used to that, because we didn't have that screens when I was in the school, you know. But now these kids, all they want is the screen in front of them. This is way more convenient way for them to communicate comparing to talking, you know. So I think this is going to be the future, inevitable future. Yeah.
Last question.
Sorry.
Do you have an idea how many other companies are using your methodology?
Well, exactly my approach, I'm not sure there are many companies. I know a few groups who are, in general, promote distributed development and working with remote programmers. But exactly that way, like explicitly saying no meetings, I haven't seen anyone. Because every time people just saying, hey, it's easier for me, just let's get these two bastards in the same room and let them talk. Because I can't understand, they don't understand each other, it's taking too much, so let's just let them talk. And this is the weakness of a management. So the management are not strong enough to say, no guys, this is the formal way you communicate, so stop talking and do it that way. So this barrier, the management should be strong enough to put this barrier between programmers and say, don't talk to each other like that, always communicate through the ticketing system and through the source code. But that's difficult. So I'm not saying this is easy. So it's kind of utopia picture I'm giving you, because we can do that, but I'm not sure if you will be able to do it tomorrow. But at least start thinking towards that direction. That's my call to action for you. So start thinking about that. And of course, like I said, check my blog, follow my Twitter, let's stay in touch. We're done?
Yeah, we have to.
Sorry, you can come to me later. Give me your. Yeah, I'll give you my card. We can stay in touch later. Thanks for coming.
Okay. Don't forget to take the card.